Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are uplifting positive stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody.
And happy Thanksgiving if you're listening to this on Thanksgiving or just the weekend of Thanksgiving. I know it's releasing the day before, technically.
Yes.
American Thanksgiving, to be clear, just in case you're a Canadian listener. I'm not sure exactly what week that is, but I think that already happened.
might have. But today's episode is all about just being thankful and trying to find opportunities in our day-to-day life to kind of stop and reflect on things that we're happy about and that are going positively, because it can be hard sometimes when things are tough, whether it's stress or whether it's health stuff or family stuff. It can be really, really hard sometimes to take that beat and kind of try to reframe our minds to be positive and reflect on the things that are going well. And again, when I say stuff like that, I'm not trying to say always be thankful or never feel upset. There's a toxic side to that as well if we're trying to only be positive, for sure. But I think there can sometimes be said that sometimes we can feel like we're drowning in a negative emotion, whatever that may be. And sometimes just by finding a little spark of joy or that little spark of gratefulness in a moment can sometimes help to kind of wash away some of the negativity a little bit and give us that little boost that we need to get through whatever it is we're trying to get through. So,
and just remind yourself that, there are things more often than not to be thankful for. Right.
Exactly. Our first story for today comes from the subreddit Kindness. And it is titled, Just Sharing This Act of Kindness. And it says, I'm at a hospital. It's about 12:30 a.m., waiting for my husband who was in surgery that was delayed from early this afternoon. When I came into the waiting area about 2 hours ago, there was an older woman, I'm an older woman too, waiting for her husband who was just out of surgery. She was on portable oxygen and had difficulty walking, was pulling around a little roller bag with her stuff and her husband's clothing, etc., moving very slowly. Very nice lady. We chatted a few minutes, but I am painfully shy and introverted, and talking with a stranger, even a very nice one, is difficult. I eventually sat down and engaged with my phone, and shortly thereafter she got the call that her husband was out of recovery and in his hospital room. We wished each other well and said goodbye. So just now, more than 2 hours later, she shows up at the waiting room door with a pizza box, asking if I'd like some. Watching the difficulty she had moving around earlier, I was simply blown away that she made the effort to walk over here, not near the hospital rooms, to offer to share with me, that she even gave me any thought at all. What a lovely thing to do. This day had many obstacles, and I spent much of it frazzled and grumpy, but her small act of kindness has humbled me and reminded me that I have many things to be grateful for. Yeah. I chose this story just because I think that can happen where sometimes one bad thing happens and then we're like, oh, great, it's that kind of day. And we kind of sometimes set ourselves into a spiral of this day's over. It's all bad now. Things are going wrong. I need to go to bed and wake up tomorrow and hopefully things are better. It can happen like that. We get into sometimes a negative spiral. And so sometimes it can just take a little thing like that in this case, it was an outside person doing something kind like that, to remind them of, oh, I guess things aren't so bad. That was really nice. And now I'm suddenly not feeling so grumpy anymore because I was kind of taken aback by how nice that was. And sometimes we can do that ourselves too, of just reminding ourselves of positive things that are going on in our lives or positive things in the future or hope for something better. Whatever that might be for yourself, that can sometimes kind of pull you out of that spiral when it's happening, and it's way easier said than done. I know I struggle with it really, really bad sometimes,
especially recently with how busy and crazy we've been. It's gonna probably get better as we have now moved away from our crazy busy season, but that was It was
Yeah.
hard for a bit there.
It's hard. Yeah, when you're stressed and you're worn out and tired, it can be really hard to pull yourself out of that when you're feeling overwhelmed. And it can be hard to see the positive that is going on. But sometimes just having either a reminder to yourself or a reminder from somebody else in this case can really, really help. So, kind of taking stock. Another story here is from What's the Most Wholesome Experience You've Had? And it says, I was a junior in college and in New York taking on an internship at my dream advertising firm. It was my birthday and I didn't know anyone in the city, so I went to a nicer restaurant during my lunch break to treat myself. During the lunch, I was on the phone talking to my father, and a stranger next to me heard that I was feeling a bit lonely on a day that is typically supposed to make you feel special. A woman next to me, who was also celebrating her birthday, paid for my lunch and bought me a slice of cheesecake, requesting that they also light a candle. Finishing our meal before me, she came over and told me that you don't always need to be surrounded by people you love to have a good birthday. Enjoy the fact that you're 1 year closer to making your life what you want it to be, and reflect on what is most important to you. I never got her name, but that moment made all the difference and reshaped the way I celebrate my birthday. It was beautiful. Yeah, I thought that was really, really cool because I think it's a different approach than saying, like, remind yourself of the good things that are going on in your life, and instead she said, remind yourself that you're 1 year closer to what you want in life, what you're hoping to achieve, what your hopes and dreams are, right? It's a very different approach, I feel like, because some people that, you don't know what someone's going through. They could have not much going on in their lives that they're feeling good about in that moment. Maybe things are really, really hard, right? But to have that, there's always hope of some kind. It could be anything. And so instead that you're one step closer to whatever it is you're trying to achieve, because then you're another year older, you're another day closer to that, you know what I mean? That mindset is a little bit different, and I think it's one that we can all have. It's more approachable to everyone, no matter what your circumstances. And so I just thought that was a really cool thing for that stranger to say, and very profound. And like it sounds in the story, it sounds like it was very impactful. So reshape the way that they celebrate their birthday. Because sometimes I think also we kind of get into a spiral of this has to happen a certain way or it's a failure or it's not good. Like especially with like holidays, birthdays, we kind of have these expectations in our mind of, well, if I don't have so-and-so say happy birthday to me, well, then that's sad and now my birthday's ruined. Or, oh, if no one notices this or whatever about, no one gets me anything for Christmas and no one says Merry Christmas or stops by, then it wasn't really Christmas at all. You know what I mean? Like we kind of put these expectations out there of, I need these things to be happy. And so sometimes by having that reminder to all of us that it doesn't always take outside things to make something positive, that we can make it positive for ourselves and whatever that might look like. And so, yeah, I just thought that was really, really cool.
Birthdays have come up a few times in the podcast.
Yeah.
It can be a tricky time sometimes, because, involve a lot of other people and, it's like a mixture of like, you're aging and you're growing and you're looking at yourself introspectively. And then also there's like other people and like how it kind of reflects sometimes like how others view you or value you and like, or how you can affect how you think others value you. So it's tricky. It's a really
hard thing. Yeah.
So to kind of try to find a new perspective that allows you to find something to take from it that's positive or to be thankful for, And then with that as well, it kind of goes off a branch a little bit here, but I know I can't remember what the exact message was, but I know this came up in church a while back, that Pastor Tom was talking about with, finding a way to be thankful for the struggle, which is a really like who's going to be like, thank you God, or thank you wherever for this horrible time I'm going through. But you don't see the end of the tunnel yet. You don't know where it's leading to, and maybe you're going to learn something from this hard time, this experience, this moment of loneliness that like you wouldn't have gathered otherwise. Like a lot of times we can look back on the times that were a struggle for us, and then being removed from it from years from now. It's like, well, I'm glad we went through that struggle, because if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
It's kind of like, again, like the idea of like, oh, like you've gone through an incredible heartbreak, like you went through a bad breakup, or something like that. But like because of that, then years later, say like you're able to find the right person for you who became your spouse.
Right.
Or, like for us, we both went through different heartbreaks before we met each other, in some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we hadn't gone through those, we wouldn't be who we are. We wouldn't
Right.
be where we are in the position where we could have met each other.
Yep.
I mean, I had mentioned before previously in this podcast, I went through a period of time where I almost dropped out of college, and there's a whole series of growing that I did in that time that was awful in terms of how I was introspectively viewing myself and thinking about myself. But if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have been in a position to be able to meet you properly in a way that I think would have been a good start for our relationship. So that's, again, at the time, you're going to probably be like, oh, I'm thankful that this sucks right now.
Right.
But maybe finding a way to be like, hey, maybe there's a reason I'm going through this, or I'm going to try to find the lesson from it,
that reminder of I'm one day closer to what I want to be at, even if I don't know what that is yet.
Mm-hmm. Or even if I feel like I'm further away. Because when I first heard you say that, I was like, but like, what if you're like in a position where you feel like you're moving away, like you're taking steps backwards, like you're trying to save up to be able to move into a bigger house or something, and you've had some financial setbacks that have moved you backwards. So I could see how you could feel like you're not moving in the right direction, but you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what you've learned, what's brought you there. Or a quote I saw recently, like circulate online, this nothing special, like a meme or something, that was like, hey, like the only expression of like, oh, for every 3 steps forward you take 2 steps back, that's still a step forward.
Right.
It doesn't feel like it because you took those 3 steps forward and then you got knocked backwards, but overall you still took a step forward.
Right.
It just doesn't feel like it, but again, over time, like say you in 5 years from now looking back, like, oh yeah, that was a series of positive steps just in the moment.
It just doesn't feel as big in the moment. Yeah. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very interesting. That's a good quote about the 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, still being a step forward. It is, I think it's really hard to see it in the moment, but I think that's really, really true.
Mm-hmm. When we've been there, that affects every aspect of our life, even like for our business and stuff, like we're making gains, and then we have to make investments and stuff. So then we're like, okay, we got money coming in, and so now it's going out into these investments for new equipment or X, Y, or Z thing that pops up. But overall, it's still okay. We're still making a stride. It just feels like, hey, we're jumped ahead, and then now we're getting knocked backwards again. Okay, all right, but it's still moving, or that applies to so many other aspects of our life too,
Exactly, 100%.
It's like, yeah, we're doing well, and like, oh no, why is there a broken tooth in our dog now or something, like, anyone who's a pet owner knows what I'm talking about. Like, hey, I'm doing great, and why are you holding your leg weird or something?
Exactly. Wait. Oh my gosh. Or like there's those like reels out there. It's like when you finally get your paycheck in the mail, and then all of a sudden it shows like an animation of a house being, I need money, things are broken now. And it's like, it's true. It's so true. Like there's always something that pops up. But I think most people could relate. But I like the idea of like, even if it's a step forward, it's still a step forward. So, and again, we all can have hope in one way or another of something. So that can be the one thing that we can cling to and remind ourselves to be grateful that we have hope. One more story here about thankfulness, and then we'll move on to some Thanksgiving stories here. This one is from the subreddit Wholesome Stories, and it is titled Happy Ending. So in 7th grade, my math teacher told me this really cute and funny story. One of his students was really smart but didn't care. He would hold his grade at a C- and just chill there. One year, this cute Italian/French foreign student comes in, and this kid really likes her. The girl was also struggling in math, but the boy asked to sit next to her and tutor her. The teacher said, you can't tutor someone if you had a bad grade, so he got his grade up. He got to tutor her, and my teacher thought that was the end of the story. So when I'm in 7th grade, he gets an email from the kid saying he's invited to his wedding. They got married in the end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I the reason I shared this story is because it reminded me of a story from when I was in school. I know that there was a teacher that I went to high school with. He was our math teacher in calculus, and it used to drive him nuts because kids every day would be like, why do I need to know all these things in calculus? Why do I need to know cosine and all these things? Like, how is that helpful? Well, that's not true. Sometimes you do.
I haven't used cosine.
My story. So he was teaching calculus and it was driving him nuts because a lot of kids were not taking it seriously, were not studying, didn't care, and were having a very I don't care, I don't need this attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bothering him because he's like, does it really even matter that I'm teaching this? Because no one cares. But he randomly out of the blue had a student reach out to him and email him that had been a student a few years before and said, hey, I remember I had this attitude in school about like, I don't know when I'm ever going to need this and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, and then I applied to a job and I got a job a few weeks ago and they actually had me have to use these things that I learned in your class. And I would have never imagined that I needed to know it. But because you were such a good teacher, I actually had some background when they were like training me in to actually be able to do it. And it had a huge impact on me. So I hope you like know that I appreciate that you were a great teacher and that even though a lot of kids in our class were like, why do we need this? I actually did. So here's a story of when I needed it. And he was so giddy about this email. He was so happy and he read the whole email to our class. I was like, see, you might need it. You never know. And like, it was just, you could see the joy in his face of like finally getting that validation that what he was doing was worthwhile and had positively impacted somebody. And I think teachers especially really need that because they don't really get paid as much as they should. I know we've talked about that before. And a lot of them really truly are doing it because they care and they want the next generation to be more educated and have a better step up for whatever it is they're going into career wise. And so to see that validation that, oh my gosh, all this effort I'm putting in that for a job that is very taxing and hard and see that it's making an impact on people in some way is really, really profound. And so if you were impacted by a teacher in some way in your life, maybe consider reaching out over email. Most of their emails are usually listed on school websites and stuff like that if they're still teaching there, and just let them know.
Or I promise you they're on Facebook somewhere.
Right.
Or something like that.
There's
depending on the generation.
Gotta be a way to reach out. And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they will be ecstatic to hear from you and to know that they somehow impacted you in a positive way.
Yeah.
That's just a little thing that we can do because teachers really do put their heart and soul into everything a lot of times. And so, yeah, it's just something that reminded me of that story and making sure that when we do recognize, again, gratefulness in our lives, that we express it, not just to teachers, but to people in our lives as well.
And, this kind of works into my point earlier as well. In the case of, about math and calculus and stuff.
Yeah.
Just because you might not use those specific skills or that specific knowledge doesn't mean you're not still building like analytical reasoning or those kind of skills that can translate into other aspects of your future,
100%.
your life. Even if it's not specifically those things, you're still, there's something of value to gain from it, even if you don't realize that even if it's not going to be for that specific directly. Obviously it did for that example given, because it could.
You never
know. But, there's other ways that still benefits your life. I mean, we've talked about it here before. Did our college degrees really have a direct impact on our career besides having it say college on our resume?
Yeah.
Not really. Most things we've done for our career, we've learned outside of school or we've learned on the job. Besides a couple little things, but there's other skills that we learned in college that have just impacted our lives outside of a direct career through line.
Yep.
100%. So I would argue that I feel like there's ways it could have better impacted my career, than it did, but I still value that education because it did influence my career in indirect ways and other aspects of my life and, analytical thinking and such.
100%.
And then going off of what I was saying earlier about trying to, I just had thought of an analogy for as well with, trying to be thankful of wow, your things are sucking. It's kind of like, when you're at the gym working out or something, you're struggling and you're in a lot of pain. You're like, oh, this sucks, but you're doing it to get stronger. You're doing it to build those muscles, build that endurance, and then get better. You're not doing it because you're going to instantly be better right then that moment. You're trying to build that up and you're actually literally destroying your muscles and then rebuilding them,
Right.
So that still applies to other aspects of your life, whether it's your finances or your family life or whatever it is you're trying to strive towards, it's gonna suck while you're doing it to a certain extent or oftentimes, but to kind of focus on here's what I'm doing it for, here's what I'm working towards.
Yep. Yep, for sure. All right, going on to Thanksgiving stories. So here we go. We got some fun ones. So this one is from the subreddit Thanksgiving, and is titled Positive Thanksgiving Stories. Here's what the initial post said. It says, I will go first. I grew up in the 1970s and 1980s. My dad would find complete strangers who had nowhere to go and invite them to his potluck Thanksgivings. Most simply came and went, but at 91 years old, he was still in contact with some friends with others. He has not done this since the 70s and 80s. He's just in contact with them. So that's kind of cool. He developed some friends out of that, but just inviting strangers that didn't have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving. That was really cool.
That's nice.
This next story that is on that same thread, someone said, my mom makes the best sweet potato casserole.
Whoa.
My brother and sister
Bold.
and I ask for it all the time. She makes it for Thanksgiving and occasionally birthdays. I even asked her to make me one in July when I had knee surgery. Anyway, a few years back, she got a new stove. The knobs were backwards from her old one, and she was always turning on the wrong eye. Thanksgiving comes around, she puts the pot of corn on the back eye, pulls the sweet potato casserole out of the oven, and sets it on the front eye to cool. Only she hadn't turned on the back eye. She turned on the front one by mistake. The direct heat of the eye shattered the glass Pyrex dish. Sweet potato casserole was dripping all over the stove. Mama was already having a bad day, so she started to cry. As a joke, to make her smile, I said I didn't care. I'll still eat it. Mama's sweet potato casserole is thebomb.com. My brother joined in and pulled 2 forks out of the drawer. We were not going to let the magnificent orange mush go to waste. So he stood over the stove, absolutely in Mama's way, picking glass out of the casserole and ate what we could until there was more glass than casserole, which was fine because the top was the good part anyway. We were giggling like little kids, which of course was contagious, so Mama started laughing too. My brother and I got the casserole to ourselves. Mama didn't cry, and the rest of the dinner went off without a hitch. I love this story. Well, first of all, I wouldn't recommend if there's possible glass in, because glass can be like tiny, tiny microscopic pieces. So if you're eating that casserole, there's a good chance there might be some little piece of glass in that. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But in this situation, as a story, I thought it was a great example of like I mentioned earlier, how we can get into a negative spiral where like nothing's working out, everything is ruined.
And everybody
I hate today.
hates me.
And I have nothing to be grateful for because everything is ruined, and you know what I mean? Might as well just scrap the day kind of feeling, because that can definitely happen, especially when cooking a big meal like that. I feel like that happens so often for Thanksgiving. The turkey burns or whatever, or your mashed potatoes end up completely wrong. Like you mix some of an ingredient. Like people sometimes mix up salt instead of sugar for pie, and they're like, oh my gosh, my pie is ruined, and this was my pie I was looking forward to all week. There's so many mishaps with recipes for Thanksgiving that can happen, especially when you're juggling multiple dishes, and it's so easy when you have a bunch of people waiting on you, and it's like the big moment, Thanksgiving, when things get ruined, to just let it ruin your entire attitude and mood.
Yeah.
And instead, in this moment, it was a great kind of flip on it, where the kids stepped up and kind of reminded their mom, like, it's not about the potato casserole. You know, it's about, like, this memory now. You know, we're just going to make light of it, and we're going to eat it off the stove and be kind of laughing about it. And that completely changed her perspective, and I'm sure it put it back into a different frame of mind where it's not about the sweet potato casserole. It's about being with my family. And look at my kids are trying to make me feel better about it. You know, like, I guess I can be happy about that. And maybe I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about my kids or about the family part. I was thinking more so about the execution part of it and having it go off without a hitch. And it's so hard to do, but I think it's an important reminder that sometimes we kind of need that reality check of like, maybe I shouldn't be so concerned about this going perfectly or this being the thing that goes the way I had envisioned.
Because it won't.
Most of the time. And instead take stock in the little things, the little things that can really make us in a better mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another story that's similar to this from another thread on Thanksgiving subreddit that was called Funniest Thanksgiving Sayings /Stories /In Jokes. This one said, my mom made a pie that didn't set for some reason. It was just kind of ooze out of slice form, and it left a puddle of pie goo. She called it boneless pie, and we all had a good laugh. So sometimes you can also just make light of things when they don't go perfectly,
That'd
too.
be a pie if I try to make it, probably.
Right. Things happen, you know?
Baking pies.
Baking a lot of times is science, and so when things go wrong, it can go really wrong. But again, and we've had a lot of stories like that on this podcast of funny things happening with recipes, but it's just an example of taking something and making light of it and not letting it ruin your day or ruin your mentality just because of something going not the way you envisioned, and instead being happy about like, hey, I can have this new joke with my family and I can be happy about that, you know? Another one from the subreddit Thanksgiving from that same thread. This was just funny, and I thought I would share it because it made me chuckle. It says, I heard a Thanksgiving joke on the radio the day before Thanksgiving, and I told my parents, if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? Any ideas?
No.
Pilgrims. Get it? The Mayflower brings pilgrims. Ha ha ha. All right. So all day, when my mom made this round of long-distance calls to family, she told this joke, and it was a hit. Until she called my grandmother, who yelled at her, I do not need a history lesson on Thanksgiving, and then hung up on her. What? Needless to say, we tell the joke every year with the added punchline.
Thanksgiving, it's a historical holiday. What do you mean I don't need a history lesson? What?
Also, my late father's annual joke in late October, early November was always, wow, Thanksgiving is on a Thursday again this year? What are the chances? But I just...
That gives New Year's, hey, I'll see you next year. I mean, I do.
Yeah,
that all the time,
exactly.
but...
And everyone internally groans. But I just thought that was so funny. You know, sometimes people are just not in the mood for a joke, I guess. And clearly, Grandma was not ready for that. Maybe she burned her turkey and she was just not in a good mindset. We don't know the situation. But it was just funny. And the fact that that's now a running joke in their family. I don't need a history lesson or whatever. It's so funny. I thought that'd be a funny way to end the episode because it made me chuckle. Anyways, yeah, if you have fun Thanksgiving plans or it's just stories of times in your life where you've kind of had a change in mindset and reminded yourself to be thankful for something, anything like that, feel free to comment them down below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com, and we might just share it on a future podcast episode. We also have a Reddit, Uplift Positive Stories, if you want to share it on there as well.
Before we go, quick, favorite Thanksgiving food item?
Ooh, mine I think is stuffing.
It's not green bean casserole?
It's close, but I think it's stuffing.
I think you flip-flop on that sometimes.
Depends, I guess. But yeah, how about for you?
I probably flip-flop a little bit as well between green bean casserole and sweet potato casserole.
Sweet potato casserole is one done
It
well.
depends.
It's going to be really good.
It does depend on the sweet potato casserole. I guess it's true for all the food, but I think sweet potato either has to be done really well or it's just not good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, all the good foods.
Now I'm hungry.
Me too.
Let's go eat.
But yeah, thanks so much for listening. Feel free to tune in next Wednesday for our next episode, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week.
And stay positive.